just believe in the power of healing and restoration. And I know that if we can just come together and speak about the hard things, we can finally begin to heal. So, this is where we heal.
This is another episode of This Is Where We Heal. Today I have my beloved and bestie, one of my besties, Samantha Bourgeois. That's how you say it, right?
Yeah.
Bourgeois. I always love to say her last name because it sounds so fancy. And I actually didn't know how to pronounce it for
I'm
like...
a fancy gal. What can I say?
You are. I agree with that. So Sam has been on. If you are a regular listener, Sam has actually been on before. And so today we're actually diving in a little bit deeper than we did the first time. And we're going to talk about her personal experience and her story specifically. But we're also going to talk about divorce, and we're going to talk about the struggles that women have when they're empathetic. We're going to talk about having boundaries, setting boundaries in your life, and how that affects your, not only your romantic relationships, but your career and your life outside of that. So without further ado, Sam, say hello.
Hello. Thank you for having me today.
You're welcome.
I'm excited to be here on purpose.
Yes,
Because
exactly.
last time I was on, that was not scheduled. I was not planning on being on camera.
I know.
And
Yeah, so her first episode was impromptu.
Those thumbnails.
I know. I love it, but God love you.
That was a really good conversation, though.
It was. I
Yeah.
really enjoyed it. We
did
talked.
too.
I don't even remember what we talked about now, but I do remember laughing and being goofy and also having
was
some
good.
serious
It
things.
was good.
But you know what? Let's get on past that, and let's talk about. So I met Sam. It's been a year and a half now, right?
Yeah, but it feels like a lifetime. I feel like I've
It
known you
really
forever.
does. It really does. It's weird. It's weird how like sometimes you just meet people and you're just kind of like it's like they were always there.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it weird?
Yeah, it is.
But I met Sam about a year and a half ago, and one of the things I noticed about her right away was the clear boundaries that she had in her life. And at that time I really was still learning what that even meant.
Really? I didn't
Yeah.
know that.
Yeah, no, seriously. And you had like such a good insight too on relationships that at that point I probably should have had. But I was still learning what healthy relationships looked like. And I met you at a time that I was dating someone who wasn't healthy at all, and I didn't even see it. I didn't even see it, but you did.
Yeah.
And we won't go into all that because I think we talked about it the last time, but that was something that stood out to me. And so I want the viewers and the listeners to get an idea of who you are and what your story was and what your experience was, because you are also a survivor. And it is such an interesting story, and especially considering like how far you've come now, like who you are now in comparison to, it's like I don't even know that I would have recognized you then
Mm-hmm.
in comparison to who you were by the time I met you and who you are now. So
Yeah.
I want to go back and I want to talk about what that experience looked like for you specifically, how old you were, when it started, etc.
I mean, when it started,
Yeah.
let's say my very first boyfriend is where it started.
That was your very first boyfriend?
No, but I mean, if you want to talk about, I didn't have, a really good relationship until, I feel like I'm in my first one now, honestly. It's funny because my best friend from high school, she told me not too long ago that, which like this shocked me to hear. She told me that my first boyfriend for her is like how did she phrase it? She said it was the most abusive relationship she's ever seen. She's like, that's still like what I compare abusive relationships to because of how bad it was. And I didn't realize, we were so young. It's like, it's hard now because I look back and now I have a son who is 15
Mm-hmm.
and he is the sweetest,
Mm-hmm.
most amazing boy in the world.
He is.
He really is very, very sweet. But, I look back and, those behaviors were awful. And, but he was also a child too.
Yeah.
And there have been a lot of things now that I'm not gonna say too much, but I can see now, like, things that were probably contributing to his struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. So anyways.
Do you feel like you have more empathy for him in that particular relationship because you were so young?
I don't know. It's weird because I would say, no, I don't have empathy. I just understand it more.
Yeah.
And it's more like I don't really have feelings connected to it anymore.
Yeah.
And when I say abusive, I don't mean physical in any way, shape, or form.
Oh.
Not even remotely. But
I'm glad you made that clear, because so many, especially women in particular, and I know myself, and I've talked about this in other episodes, where when I wasn't in a physically abusive relationship, I didn't even realize it was abusive because I just thought it meant someone's hitting you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, not even remotely anything like that ever. Just very, very mean. Very mean. And I think there's a difference too. When I say abusive, it took me a long time to recognize that that's what it was. And I don't say that lightly. I don't think any bad relationship is abusive. I don't think any, just because it didn't work out, just because you didn't get along. My marriage wasn't abusive. We just didn't work out.
Yeah.
So I don't, but now as an adult, knowing what I know about it was emotionally abusive. It definitely was. And where was I going with that? So to your point, I look at it and I'm like, I can have, it's weird. I can't say I have empathy, but I can't say I don't have anything towards it anymore. It's almost just like I almost can look at it from, it feels like someone else at this point. I'm so emotionally removed from it. It's
which is great.
It's like a factual thing versus like a.
Yeah.
So,
and time does do that, I think. Time and healing really does set that in place, which is also just an encouragement to anyone listening who's in it right now that is struggling and feeling like this pain will never go away, because it does feel like that when you're in it and right after you leave, it does feel that way.
Yeah.
But I can promise you that there will be a time, and I tell people this when they reach out to me and they're there, I tell them every time, I promise you there's going to come a time when you look back on this situation and you feel nothing about it anymore. I promise you. Just stay the course. Keep working on yourself. Keep healing. Keep choosing to move forward. And I promise you that this will not affect you anymore. But going on.
Well, it does take a long time. And there was something that was interesting. I can't even believe I brought that up, because that's not even someone that even crosses my mind when I think of these things anymore. But when you ask me where it started, I mean, I guess that's where it started. And when I was thinking about today and what we talk about, there's one particular person that comes to mind when I think of abusive relationships in my life. And I, if we were going to talk about anything, that would definitely be the one to talk about. And it was interesting, this like thought process that I had, because leading up to today and thinking about, not really knowing what we would talk about, but just thinking, if you ask me questions about things, that's who probably I would be talking about. And I was getting like nerves about it, and I wasn't sure why. And it's not because I care about that person finding out. It's not because I have I feel weird about talking about it or sharing about it. And a few days ago, my boyfriend actually sent me a text, and he was like, it was really sweet. He said something like, I know you seem kind of nervous about the podcast, and, I just want to make sure you know that you don't have to talk about anything you don't want to talk about. And it's different, sharing it with a therapist or with a friend or with me, but, than it is sharing with 100,000 people. So you don't have to talk about anything you're uncomfortable with. And I was like, yeah, thank you. Like, that was really sweet. And, I know that. But him saying that got me thinking, because of course I know that, like, in my head. But then I started thinking about okay, well, why am I nervous about this? And I realized it wasn't really nerves as much as it was just not feeling good about it. And I realized actually, like last night and today, that it's not because I have any fear about talking about those things, but it's because I feel so moved on from it. And so it's like the best way I can explain it is those people don't deserve to have any more of my attention or energy.
Amen.
This story is not about them.
Yeah.
This story is about me. And so when you ask me what my story is, I don't want to talk about I mean, I will talk about that, but I mean, like, I don't even think about talking about them because it's not about them. They don't deserve any more spotlight in my life.
Amen.
And there was a time when I was first going through it and leaving, and you're in the thick of it and you're in the process where talking about it does help. You want to sit in your therapist and talk about every single thing they did because it's like you start to realize, you start to see it for the first time for what it really is. And so then you want to talk about every single instance and you want to dissect it and you want to know why and this and that. And then, but that doesn't feel helpful to me anymore. It's like, I don't even want to be bothered by thinking about you anymore. You don't deserve any more of my energy or space in my life. I am the story.
Amen. You know, I want to just on a little side note with that, just say really quickly that one of the reasons I feel like therapy is so important when you are in that place still, and then we'll come back to this, but is that sometimes you're being abused, and because it doesn't look the way that you thought abuse traditionally looked, you don't even realize it until a therapist sits in front of you and literally dissects it with you and goes, this is abuse. Like, that's what happened for me with my last relationship after my divorce, the one relationship that you know about and I've briefly talked about, but I didn't.
It took your therapist saying that.
No, you had said it. Well, you never came out. You never just blatantly said he's abusing you until later, right? It was later, but at first you were just asking questions that were like irritating to me, or like making points that I was just like, oh God, why is she making it? You know, I was almost irritated with you at first.
Oh, I know.
And I could even
I'm not shocked to hear that.
And I could even see you being like careful about the way you said things because I knew deep down. And so I didn't want you questioning things, right? Yeah. But sitting in therapy, when it started to feel wrong to me, and a therapist looking at me going, you do realize that that's abuse, right? And having to go, oh my God, you're right. That was abuse, and I didn't even call it abuse. I don't know what I thought it was. Anyway, my whole point is that if there's any part of you that is going, this feels bad. This relationship doesn't feel good. This relationship makes me feel like I'm losing myself, or like I'm depressed, or like any of these things. And don't get me wrong, relationships are hard no matter what. You're going to have seasons of, you know, struggle. You're going to have seasons where you're not your best. Those things are normal. But being in a relationship that makes you feel like you're losing your soul is not normal. And sometimes because they're not hitting you, you don't even recognize that that's what's happening. And so therapy is such a good resource for when you're in something that you're going, something's not right, but I don't know why.
And I just want to add a few things to that. One, this is just my opinion, but based on my experience and my experience working with so many women who have been in bad relationships, you need to get in therapy by yourself.
Yes.
You need to not start with couples therapy. Because as hard as this is to hear, if you might be in a relationship that should not be saved. You might be in a relationship that you need to get out of, and you need to talk to someone who is going to be safe for you to talk to.
Yeah.
You cannot, if you are in an abusive relationship, or you suspect that you are in an abusive relationship, you should get in therapy alone.
Yeah.
Because if you're in therapy with an abuser, getting in therapy just gives them more tools to manipulate you. You need an outside source who can see the situation clearly and give you input on the situation as a whole. So that was the first thing I wanted to add. And
at minimum, if you're we'll say you're married, or you're in a long-term relationship and couples counseling is something that gets brought up, at minimum, do both. At minimum, do both. Don't just do couples therapy. It's great and wonderful. It's an amazing tool for couples that are overall a good match and are kind and respectful to each other, but they're just struggling, that's great. But if you even think that this could possibly be an abusive situation, at the very least, if you have to do couples therapy, that's fine. But at least get it for yourself too.
Yeah, I'm not saying don't do couples
Yeah.
therapy, but you need to be in therapy by yourself if you are even questioning.
Yeah.
Because if you're questioning, there's probably a reason you're questioning.
Agreed.
And
yeah.
something you said just made me want to mention that a sign that you might be in something that's really bad is if you are afraid to tell your friends and family what's going on.
Oh, yes.
And I'm not talking like, oh, we got in a fight, I don't want to talk about it. If you feel like there's going to be something bad is going to happen because you tell them, if you fear the person you're with doing something in retaliation to you because you confide in your friends and family, that is a big sign. And
another red flag with that, I'm glad you brought that up, is when you're with someone who does not want you to talk to anyone about anything in your relationship. Now, privacy is one thing, but making you feel afraid to talk about it is another thing. And when someone doesn't have anything to hide, they should actually encourage you to talk to your friends about certain things in your relationships that can help you like see things more clearly. Even couples just in general should have other people that they can go to when, hey, I'm struggling with, this, I'm struggling with that. What's your take? Like, that's a healthy thing to do.
Yeah.
And someone that's like, you need to quit talking to so-and-so about the things that go on in our relationship. It's making me look bad. It makes me sound bad. Well, it's like, if you're putting yourself in positions to look bad and sound bad,
makes you sound bad,
that's the problem. And I should be able to talk about certain things and have people to get feedback from.
So another thing I wanted to say is that my therapist said this to me, and it's so true. Sometimes you got to listen to your friends and family. If the people closest to you are setting off alarms that there's something seriously wrong, you should take that into consideration.
Yeah. If everyone in your life hates the person that you're with, there's a reason for that. And we don't want to admit it. My God, think about all the relationships you've been in where every single person in your life was like, I don't like him. I don't like the way he treats you. I don't like the way he talks about you. I don't like the way he talks to you. And when you're in that, it's like the worst feeling in the world, but you don't want to hear it. Like, you're so blind to it.
Yeah.
Even though you know deep down, you're so blind, and it all, honestly, it like isolates you from your friends and family too. And that's another thing. Abusers will always isolate you intentionally, but even if you begin isolating yourself, that's also a bad sign. If you don't even want to.
Another sign, if you find yourself saying things like, you're in this cycle of things being bad, and then you make up and they're good and they're bad, and your friends and family are not jumping back on board when things are good again, and you find yourself saying things like, well, I don't tell you about the good things, I only tell you about the bad, and that's why you don't like him. You don't know about all the good things. Here's the thing. I don't care. I've said that. I know every woman says that.
Yeah.
And that's in a bad relationship. And speaking from my own experience, there's no amount of good things that make those bad things okay.
Yeah.
And a good, healthy relationship, there are certain things that just don't happen. Abuse doesn't happen, in a good, healthy relationship.
No.
No matter how good the good is.
Yeah. That's so true. That is, oh my God, that's such a good point.
I don't even want to sit here, I don't want to come across as, I know women are abusers too.
Yeah.
We're speaking from our experience as women, but I don't want to sit here and say that all men are bad and only men are bad. That's, we're talking about abuse and as women who have been in abusive relationships. So I just want to clarify that I'm speaking from my own perspective and experience as a woman in this world who has been in bad relationships, but I by no means think that this is all men, nor do I think that it's only men.
Yeah. I can honestly say, like, I have been in relationships or even just like casual dating situations with men that were not abusers at all.
Yeah.
But I can tell you from experience, like now that I'm way outside of that and in just a different place, that the good relationships that I did have didn't work out because of all the other abuse I'd endured, because of the guards that I had up, because of the triggers that I had. I couldn't even function in a healthy relationship the way I would want to.
That's so true.
Because I was so used to toxic, so used to abuse, that even the healthy, good men in my life, it didn't work out. And looking back, I see that now. Like when I think about the very few good relationships that I had, and I go, wow, that actually ended because of me. Because I didn't know how to be in a safe relationship.
I can totally relate to that. I mean, I think we were talking the other day, and it's been, I mean, it was what, like 7 or something years after my divorce before I got into a real relationship. And it's I would say the first one I've been in that is just good in all the ways. He's amazing. Yeah. And being in this relationship has shined such a spotlight on my own insecurities and things that I thought I had worked through and things I have worked through, but things that I thought were no longer issues. And now I'm with someone who's so great, and all these feelings of like, why is he with me? I don't deserve this. What, like, I have nothing to offer him. Like all those things that before this, I would have told you how great I am. I mean, I really worked on my self-worth, and I've done a lot of therapy. I've done a lot of things to work on that. And I didn't know that they were still there until I was with someone who treated me like I deserved to be treated. And then it's like, oh my God, I don't deserve this.
This is so good, because I tell people this too all the time, that there is some work that is absolutely vital for you to do on your own. Self-concept is one of those things, and self-love is one of those things. However, there will be things that you can't heal until you get in a healthy relationship that requires a healthy relationship for you to heal from. And that's the perfect example of you did 7 years. 7 years of working on yourself and healing and going through things and in therapy, and all of that was absolutely vital for you. But like you said, going into this new relationship that was actually healthy for the first time in your life, you realized all the things that still needed healing that you couldn't have done on your own. You actually have to sometimes heal certain things in a healthy relationship, but do the work on yourself first. It's so important. It's so important.
Because no one else can heal you. No one else can fix you. As cliche as it is, they just can't.
There's certain things.
And even I'm noticing these things, but they're not his to fix.
Right.
You know,
you also have the self-awareness now, and you also have the self-worth to go, okay, I feel this way. I'm triggered by this, but this isn't him. This is me, and this is for me to work on, and I'm safe, and this is healthy, and it's okay. But you also have the self-awareness and the wisdom to go to a friend and say, okay, this is how I'm feeling. What do you think? Is this, do I need, and you know what I mean? And that's also really important too.
And honestly, as hard and as vulnerable as it is, I've said those things to him too. Like,
that's so good.
You know, I've been honest with him when oh my God, I can't speak. I have been honest with him when those feelings come up, and he's like, you're more than good enough. Like, why would you, and then he
assures you. He reassures you, and he's calm, and he doesn't take it the wrong way. And that's also such a telltale sign of a healthy person. An unhealthy person in a relationship is going to run away, avoid, ignore every time you bring up anything that's bothering you, upsetting you, or that you need to talk through. But when they're healthy, you can go to them with anything and they can handle it. That is such a good thing for people to understand. I can't tell you how many times, well, I can't tell you because you know all of this. There have been things I've wanted to talk to him about, and I've just been freaking sick over it to bring it up. And now looking back, I'm like, those things like really weren't a big deal, but I have this huge fear of, I used to have to walk on eggshells in past relationships, and you never know what's going to set someone off, and you never know. And oh my God, he's going to leave me over this. And I like all of these fears tied up in bringing up
the most like not really big deal things.
Yeah.
And there have been so many times that I've like talked to you about bringing things up with him, and you're like, he's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
And it always is. It always has been. He listens.
Every time.
Yeah.
Without fail.
Yeah. But I still have like these fears about bringing things up, and I know, even in the moment, I know this has nothing to do with him, because he's never reacted in a way to anything that gives me evidence that I should be fearful to bring these things up.
Yeah. But
I am. And honestly, though, the more of those that happened, the easier it's gotten. You know, those feelings of being afraid have lessened and lessened. And
because he's become a safe place for you to go.
Exactly. And honestly, at the end of the day, if anything that I were to bring, and this is crazy too, because in the moment I'm like, okay, well, God, if any of these conversations I want to bring up with him cause him to say, okay, you know what, I don't think this is for me, I'm going to be fine.
Yeah.
That's, and I actually was talking to my therapist about this, and he said, because when you have trauma, he's like, that's probably rooted in childhood. Like, that goes back deep, and it doesn't make logical sense. But when you have trauma, your brain tells you you're going to die. You're going to die if you bring this up. So even though in your head, you know, you're going to be fine no matter what happens, there's a reaction in you that is like a life or death response. And it makes so much sense. And once he said that to me, and I was able to like really step back from it, it was still hard as hell, but
yeah. But you also realize in the process of that, okay, so if I can bring these things up to him and he can handle it and he's okay with it and he's so calm and gracious with this, then I truly wasn't doing anything wrong in the relationships before when I did that same thing and received such wrath or
so good.
Such an extreme reaction. Like my last relationship, and you know this because we would talk about it, but anything I brought up, I was received with the opposite of what I needed. I was received with the silent treatment. I was received with you're too emotional. I was received with you're delusional. Everything that I didn't need. I don't want to talk about this right now. I'm not doing this right now. And then ignored for a day. Like,
that was intentional.
Yeah, exactly. But I wasn't even asking for anything but a conversation.
Right, but you would be clear about what you needed. And so honestly, in that relationship, that was the worst thing you could do, is communicate what you needed, because then he knew exactly what not to do. You know what I mean? He knew exactly. I mean, that guy was just abusive in every sense of the word. Was. And it was to tear you down. Yeah. You know? And so you being who you are, being very open, being very communicative. There you go. It gave him the tools to tear you down.
Yeah. I just had like this epiphany too that I never thought about with him, that I think is important for women or anyone to know that's been in a physically abusive relationship. I had told him my abuse story. Okay. And that should be a safe thing to do with a healthy person, with a healthy relationship. That should be a safe place to do that. Right.
Right.
He knew that I had been strangled in my abusive relationship. And this just hit me because I had never thought about this, but we had broken up one night, and you know this story.
I hate this story.
And even to the,
I want to fucking kill him. To
this day, like it just hit me that he knew I had been strangled. And that night we broke up, I was crying in his truck as we were talking about things. And out of nowhere, he put his hand on my throat and pushed me back into the seat. And then he just stopped. And I didn't even look over at him because I was so shocked and I couldn't believe it. And it took me a long time to understand what the hell had even just happened in that moment, because he didn't strangle me. He didn't choke me. He just put his hand on my throat and pushed me. And even though that seems like maybe to somebody else like not that big of a deal in comparison to being strangled before.
Anytime somebody puts their hands on your throat, it is a big
No, it is.
Deal. Okay,
totally.
I'm not really saying that for you because I know you, but I know you know now.
But I'm saying like the fact that he knew I had been strangled before and did that was him showing dominance. And I didn't know that until just now. But literally just clicked with me that that's him saying, I control these situations. You will do what I want. And you have to fear me. He wanted me to be fearful of him for whatever reason. Anyway, I want to go back to, and I know you don't want to tell like the full story because you all have moved on and you have healed and you are in you're in much better place now, which I love. And we're going to talk about that too. But you ended up becoming a coach, and you're a cosmetologist, you're a color specialist, and you created courses and different things. And part of that was you teaching women in the cosmetology field, one, to have boundaries and to expect more for themselves and to ask for more than they thought they deserved. Yeah. And I want to know what motivated you with that, because it correlates to the abusive relationship that you were in before you ever had boundaries.
Yeah. I kind of fell into this successful business doing hair, and it all started because, I was 8 years into cosmetology, doing things how everyone else did them, how we were taught to do them. And at that point in my career, I was fully booked for months on end. I was educating for huge product lines, traveling. I was the person that people in the salon would come to with color questions. I really felt like I was at a point where when I started doing hair, I would look like, okay, that's when I made it. That's when I'm making money.
You reached the peak of what you thought you were supposed to reach.
And I couldn't pay my bills.
That's wild.
I was choosing which bills to pay. And I was so overworked, and I felt like I was just run by, some of my clients now are still my clients that I had then, and they're amazing. But I also had a lot of clients that did not respect me, did not respect anything. I just felt like my business was running me, and it was like, what's the point? I still can't even freaking pay my bills. And so I had this realization of like, okay, well, how this is going isn't working, and I'm about ready to quit because I am just burnt out. And it is so common for hairstylists and people in the beauty industry to get to that burnout. It is pervasive. And so I just decided, you know what, I'm going to go out, do things on my own. I had reached a I don't even care anymore point. I'm going to do exactly how I want it, or I'm going to quit and go get a freaking desk job somewhere because this is not going to work. So I really just threw caution to the wind. I quit the salon I was at. I opened my own, I started sharing a space, renting with someone part-time. And I completely revamped everything. I revamped how I did my pricing. I went from, basically, well, you know what? Every color service needs this, and it needs a haircut, and it needs a treatment. You know what? That's what I'm doing. I'm doing all-inclusive pricing. It's this price, and you get everything. And so my prices jumped up dramatically, but people got everything. And then I was able to spend more time with each client because I was charging appropriately, and it just... people loved it. I was at a point where I was like, all right, this is either going to work or it's going to drive everyone away. Yeah. And I grew quicker than I could have even imagined. I tripled my income in 3 weeks.
Wow.
And then I needed my own space. Then I needed to move to a bigger one. Then I needed to move to a double with an assistant, all within like a year.
Wow.
And so then I got to the point where it was the opposite problem, where I still had no boundaries. I was charging what I wanted. I was doing things how I wanted as services, but then I was working 12-hour days. It was all consuming. I was making a ton of money, but still I hated my life because I was so overworked. And so then I got to a point where I'm like, all right, I'm not going to take anyone that I don't want. Every client that reaches out to me is not necessarily a fit. So I started doing things where there was this intake form that they had to fill out, and then it would give them a list of like what they could expect and kind of what I expected of them, and I would have a conversation with each client before we booked. And sometimes they would decide it wasn't a fit, sometimes I would decide it wasn't a fit, and a lot of times it would be great. Because what I found is that form drove away the wrong people. I don't mean the wrong people for me. Not every client is a fit, and that's okay.
Yeah.
So anyways, I started getting really, I got a separate business phone so that everything was separate from my personal, and I checked it once a day, and I responded to people, and then what didn't get answered got answered 24 hours later. And I was really set with my timing. Like, I'm not squeezing people in. We pre-book. I just was like, you know what? Here's what I'm willing to do. Here's what I'm willing to work. And if someone doesn't want to fit in those hours, that's okay. If someone doesn't want to pay what I want to make, that's okay. Taking the emotion out of it, because it's not personal.
That's so good.
You have to be okay with turning people away or losing people or people walking away from you. And that's really hard as a people pleaser, as someone who's been in relationships where you want to...
You do everything to make it work, even though it's not working for you.
Exactly. It was really hard. But anyway, so all that to say, then I created this business that I absolutely loved, because I only worked the hours I wanted to work. I created a business that revolved around the life I wanted to live. I had 4 days off a week. I had, work-life balance. And I finally achieved this thing that seemed like a pipe dream.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I just felt I had all these people reaching out to me, all these stylists reaching out to me, asking how they could, if I could help them. And I realized, hey, I could make this a business. So I did. There was, I don't know if the episode has aired yet, but Jamie Thurber, who now coaches you, was my first coach. And she just, everything she kept sharing online, it was like every time I would get online, she would be talking, and it was like directly to my soul. So I just called her, or I sent her a message. I was like, I don't know why, but I need to hire you. And so in our first call, I was just telling her everything I told you. And I was like, so what do you think? And she's like, I don't think you have any idea how quickly you can make money doing that. And I get goosebumps telling the story, because it was December 8th. I remember this because it was right before Christmas. And I made my first payment to her, and it was like all the money I had. It was like right before Christmas. It was something in my soul was just like, you have to do this. This is freaking crazy. Anyone would tell you this is a bad idea. And yet I couldn't even stomach the thought of not doing it. And I made back more than my first payment with her in the first week of working with her.
Oh my God.
She is the freaking best investment I've ever made.
Wow.
If anyone needs any sort of coaching, life, business, anything, you need to hire Jamie.
Jamie Thurber.
So then I started working with people. I started working with them one-on-one, and then I got too booked up, and I started doing coaching groups, and then I started doing programs and all this stuff. It just exploded. And what I realized was every single stylist that I worked with that was overworked and underpaid all dealt with the same issues. I realized I actually created a course because I realized I'm having the exact same conversation with every single person I work with, and it has nothing to do with business.
What was that conversation?
Self-worth and boundaries, and being okay with people not being happy with you.
Ooh, that's a hard one.
Mm-hmm. And first we would get clear on, okay, what it is that you want. What is you want your life to look like, and the type of people you want to attract, and what you're not willing to accept anymore. And having conversations with clients, a big thing is discounting. Everyone discounts. And it's hard when you realize at some point it's just numbers, right? If I want to make this much, I have to charge this much per hour. And I have to figure out, okay, how long does it take me to do this service? Well, if it takes me 2 hours and I need to make, I don't know, $100 an hour, then this service, and as a self-employed hairstylist, if you're charging $100 an hour, you're not making $100 an hour. I just want to clarify, because a lot of that you're not actually taking home. But the point is, if you need to charge $200 for this service in order to be making what you want to make, and you're only charging $50, that's a very real example, you have to make a choice. You have to either decide, I'm just not going to make what I want to make ever, or I have to make a change and deal with what comes from that. And so we would go through this process of having this conversation with clients. Typically what I would have people do is make your new prices. We make them exactly what you want them to be. And all new clients start at that price. And then we just start having the conversations with the old clients and let them know that, I've been giving you a discount, or, we have the conversation. We deal with that on a case-by-case basis because people have different levels of comfort with what they're willing to do. There are different points of their healing stage. And so, some clients, it would be still uncomfortable, but we have the conversation and we're just doing it. And we explain to the clients why. Some people, we're not even talking to these people because you're not there, and that's okay. But everyone knew you're going to start them at this price because they're not going to know any different. And then what happens is they naturally get to a point when they get enough people at the real prices, they naturally get to a point where they can't even stomach doing the old prices anymore. And I'm sorry, this is a really long-winded answer to your question, but you have to.
I love talking about this because even though you're talking about hair and business, this also translates into your relationships and your personal life. That's why I love it.
So what I found was talking with my clients about setting boundaries with their clients, all of them, their relationships changed. Some of them left their relationships. Some of them got into therapy because they realized, so to your point, their issue was not really their clients. It was them willing to accept
less than they
deserve in every area of their life.
Amen.
And so what started happening was we start working on one area, and guess what? It opens up this whole thing where their whole lives are changing because
they're realizing that by setting boundaries at work, I'm realizing all the other places in my life that I don't have any. And oh my God, I'm not getting what I want out of this relationship either. And it's because I haven't ever set a boundary or a standard for myself.
There was one in particular. This is like so crazy, but when we first started working together, I thought she was with this great man because of the way she talked to him. And then it was like the longer we worked together, she started to realize not only it was terrible, it was terribly abusive, and she ended up leaving him.
Wow.
And then she went back, and then she finally was done with it. And it was like over the course of us working together, and I don't mean to say it's because of it was just conversations we were having, I think just kind of helped her start to see like what else was going on in her life. And so it was her starting to, I guess, stop accepting in her business relationships what she didn't want, like really made her realize where she was making excuses or settling or in other areas of her life. And she ended up like leaving a very toxic relationship. And I mean, and also another one of my clients, their marriage got a lot better.
Wow.
It can go either way. It's not always, but I mean, there wasn't an abusive relationship. I want to clarify.
I was going to say,
leave an abusive relationship.
Not every toxic relationship is necessarily abusive. Sometimes it's two people that just don't have healthy boundaries at all. Neither of them. And they aren't good at controlling emotions. And their intention isn't to hurt one another, but it's toxic because neither of them have the tools necessary to create a healthy relationship. So in that scenario, it might have just been that where.
And honestly, sometimes it's not even toxic isn't even always the word.
Sometimes just an unhealthy relationship because there's no boundaries. There's no expectations. No one's working on themselves. Yeah. But yeah, I love that because it really does open your eyes to what you allow in your life is going to shine through in every area of your life. And until a woman or a man, for that matter, realizes that at minimum, I deserve what I'm giving. At minimum, bare minimum, I deserve at least what I'm giving out, you will be accepting less. That was a big thing for me this last year is going, you know what? I at least deserve what I've given. At the very least, I deserve that. And I'm not even getting that.
You're even close to that.
I wasn't even getting close to that, and I was still accepting it. I was accepting it. I was allowing it. I was making excuses for it. And a lot of us do that until we learn. And I had to, a huge part of my healing was just learning what I deserved and actually working on feeling like I deserved it too.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So, going back to your abusive relationship that you had, I want to talk about this other dynamic of it because this is so insane to me. But we're not going to say the name of the site. But there is a site, an online site that I think there's one for men. I think there's one for women. I'm sure they're in every state, every city, where you can go on and warn other people about abusers. Okay. It's to protect other women. And this was so crazy to me. But not only had you been abused by this man, but you became very close to another woman that he had also abused. You both had children with him.
Mm-hmm.
So it was pretty serious. But the two of you actually bonded and got close with one another.
She's family. She's one of my absolute best friends.
Isn't that wild how that happens?
I love her. I love the kids. We actually were texting this morning, and I said, hey, I just want to make sure, is it okay with you if I talk about our relationship? I won't say your name. And she was like, you can say my name. I have no shame in our story. And I was telling someone the other day that getting, you and the kids out of it was all worth it. And I was like, I feel the exact same way. I'd do it all over again if I got you guys.
Amen. I love that.
If it was the only way.
Silver lining, for sure.
If I could get you a different way, I would probably choose that. But
would have been great to meet under different circumstances. I still would have loved you. But it's also really amazing, like the people that you end up meeting that come into your life because of horrible situations. However, my point was just that one of the scariest things, and this still it shocks me all the time because this happens a lot, is that abusers are so good. They are so good at the act that they have, and the mask that they wear is so convincing that sometimes the only person in their life that knows they're an abuser is the person they're abusing.
Yeah.
And it's important to say that.
Yes.
Because that is why so many people aren't believed. Yeah. Because you look at someone and they're like, a woman comes out about abuse and everyone's like, what? No, he's not like that. He would have never done that. He's the nicest guy I've ever met. Like he's a community service. Like he's doing all these things. Everyone loves him. I've never met someone more kind. And yet at home, he's abusing someone or she's abusing someone. And coming back to this, that actually happened here.
Yeah.
You literally, this man was posted on one of those pages, right? And I remember you called me and you were freaking out.
I want to share some stuff before we tell what happened. So this particular person was abusive in every sense of the word. I mean, he was just the worst. Like bad to every woman he's ever been with. And I also want to mention, this will be relevant. I don't think I told you this. This will be relevant when I share this, what happened. But one of the things he used to do was he would, on payday, he would get paid, and then he'd go to the bar, and he would be Mr. Big Shot and buy everybody around at the bar and like spend his whole freaking paycheck like being Mr. Big Shot at the bar. And that was, so here's the thing. If you met him at a bar and that was where you knew him from, you would love him. He was fun. He was a great guy if you met him at the bar. Unless he was trying to fight you later.
Right.
But so, I mean, honestly, that was really the only time I liked him was going out with him to the bar. Because
you're like, I get it. He is great when we're here.
I didn't like going home with him after. But so anyways, I saw him posted in one of those groups. And actually, no, a friend sent me a screenshot of him posted in one of those groups. I saw that there were 30 comments. And I was like, oh boy, thinking, oh my
Finally.
God, all of these comments are going to be ripping him to shreds. And it makes me sick even thinking about it. Every single one of those 30 comments was like, great guy, he's amazing, go for it. Oh
so funny, so fun.
And 90% of them were like, oh, I see him out at the bar. Like, they were all bar contacts.
But there were also some that were like, oh, I've known him my entire life. We went to school together. He was such a good guy.
Yes.
That was what freaked me out.
Yeah. And all these women were going on and on about how great he was. And so many of them were like, oh, I know him, know him from going out. Like, a lot of them were bar contacts. But I was shocked. And seeing that made me sick in a way I honestly would not have expected. I mean, because though all those people were sending that girl into a super dangerous situation.
Well, I want it for context for anyone listening to understand that the reason why he was posted on this page was because there was a young woman that was about to go on a date with him, and she just wanted to know if he had a history or a past or anything, because she didn't know him personally, right? So she wanted to like just kind of vet him first.
Yeah.
That's why it's so scary, because here's a woman who doesn't know anything about this man, and every comment is telling her, oh, he's great, he's wonderful, oh, they're literally sending her into a lion's den.
And I just want to point out that not one of those women had been in a relationship with him. And then I thought, like, I was shocked, I was floored, and then I realized, you know what, it really is not that shocking, because I don't want to go on there and post the truth under 30 of these comments talking about how great he is, because I'm going to get ripped to shreds, because I know that would have happened. And then I realized, well, the people who know the truth don't want to talk about it, because it's going to blow back on them.
Yeah. Because every time you're open and honest about an abuser, there's always hell to pay. There's always hell to pay.
So as much as I wanted this girl to be warned, at the same time, I'm like, I also have to protect myself. And I just...
Well, you didn't leave it. Let's just be clear. You didn't just leave her to the wolves, because you called me and you're like, I don't know what to do. And I was like, I'm posting about it right now.
Exactly, yeah.
And I did. But even then, I kind of got scared too. Because I was like, what if... it makes me so sad. Yeah. It makes me so sad that we're so fearful of these people and what they're capable of, that we're scared to even speak out.
I don't even care about that or him or what. There is no part of me that is like remotely worried about him, but I didn't want to get ripped to shreds by the women on there.
Oh, yeah. And that happens every time.
Because they would have.
It happens every time.
You know?
Yeah. That's so sad to me. It's so sad that there are just as many men that, lash out when a woman speaks out about her abuser. There are also women that they have strung along. Notice this. This is really important to understand too. An abuser always, without fail, has more than one woman in their life that is genuinely just there to feed the narrative that they're a great guy. And here's the key. They are a great guy to those people. Because they don't need anything from those women other than just for them to lift up the story and make them look good. So they're good. That was my ex, not my ex-husband, but my ex-boyfriend. He had like very few male friends. All of the women in his life either were in love with him or had slept with him, or they just worshipped the ground that he walked on. They thought he was so wonderful. I mean, I remember one time going to his house. He had his friend over for the weekend, this girlfriend. I didn't like it, obviously, but they had been friends for longer than I knew him, and I didn't feel like I had the right to be upset about it. She had left him a note in his shower, okay? Now, this is a man who could never show up for me emotionally, that anytime something would come up or we'd get in a fight or a disagreement, he would completely disappear and just leave me hanging, like... he just couldn't be bothered. This woman had left a note in his shower saying, thank you so much for being such a good friend to me. Thank you so much for sitting with me this weekend while I was grieving. She was upset about her dad or something, and she was there visiting her dad but staying with him. And he had spent the whole weekend with her, consoling her, being there for her, showing up for her emotionally. If I got a flat tire, he couldn't be bothered. But with these women in his life, he was a hero. And that's what's terrifying. They treat the person that they're intimate with the worst. And they treat everyone else so well that no one believes it.
I was just going to say, yeah, that's all part of it, because that's just all part of the manipulation and the gaslighting. It's like, well,
look at all these other women. They think I'm amazing. I show up for them like...
You're the crazy one.
Yeah, you're the one that needs too much. You just need more than these people need from me. Like, they don't ask so much of me. You ask too much of me. It's a wild, weird, trippy mental mind game that is so awful. And your body will tell you too. And I want to talk about that with you because you have autoimmune. Your body This is not something I've seen talked about a lot. When you are in a horrible relationship, your body will start to rebel against you.
Mm-hmm.
It is weird. I don't know the science behind it, but I do know that there are studies that say that women that have been in abusive relationships are way more likely to end up with autoimmune disorders than other people.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a reason for that.
Well, and it also is unknown. I mean, this is undisputed that stress is a huge factor in, when your body is under constant stress. I mean, my rheumatologist was like, because I was asking her, like, what are the main, anything I can do to, help things naturally. And she's like, eat well, drink water, reduce stress, get sleep. I mean, all of those things, the most basic things, are a huge factor in your health. And so when you are constantly under stress,
when you're constantly afraid, when you're constantly anxious, when you're constantly depressed, those things have a huge impact on your body physically as well.
And I will say, honestly, the very first thing she said was reduce stress. Wow. And she, of all the things we talked about, she spent the most time talking about reducing stress. She didn't talk about any sort of medicine. She didn't talk about, she talked about stress reduction the most.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's unbelievable. Wow. So that was obviously that happened years ago, and you've recovered from that and you've healed from that. But you got married and then you got divorced, and we won't go into the details about the marriage per se, other than it just didn't work, right?
Yeah. I mean, we have a great relationship now. I mean, still, we just didn't work in a marriage.
Yeah.
We tried. He's a great father.
Yeah. That's what I say about my ex-husband too.
There's no, there wasn't abuse. It was nothing like that. We just didn't work.
Yeah. But going into divorce, another thing that happens with victims a lot, divorce is horrible. I don't care who you are. Divorce is an awful, awful thing to go through. It is brutal.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are an empathetic person getting divorced, it can literally tear you apart. It can literally tear you apart. And I want to talk about that because you had a lot of insight about that. And we talked about it on the way here. And you had said you had heard something once that changed your entire perspective about divorce.
I think that in my marriage, I think there was some codependency. I think there was some trauma bonding. And so there was, even when I was leaving and we were separating, I still felt like it was my job to take care of everything. And, I asked Jamie to text me the saying, because I'm like, I only remember the divorce is business part. What was the whole thing? So Tony Twist, who I think that episode has aired by now, who's been on your podcast, he is one of my best friend's fiance. And when I was going through all that, something he said, I don't know why, but it just clicked, and it stuck with me. And it really gave me a perspective on how I needed to handle things. But he said, marriage is love and feelings. Divorce is business. There's no room for love and feelings in divorce. And so many women.
And men too, for that matter.
So many people leave marriages and are still trying to treat the divorce like a team thing. And it's not. And I'm not saying be nasty. I'm not saying don't be fair. My divorce,
you don't have to be cold, but
my divorce was very fair. There was no neither one of us was trying to take the other one for all you've got, or it was nothing like that. We worked things out ourselves, and we had a lawyer draw up the papers and sign it. So it wasn't a battle. It wasn't contested. It was nothing like that. But having that mindset of, this is business, treat it like a business. This is not something we are like a team on. We were working. You're really not. You have to look out for.
Yeah, you go into it as a business. What do I need from this? What do they need from this? Mm-hmm. How can we make this fair? How can we make this equal? And just be done. Sign the papers and be done. Mm-hmm. Versus, I don't want to take this because what if, that, and I feel bad if I ask for child support because blah, 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 blah. Like and a lot of women, even in abusive situations, when they're leaving their abuser in a divorce, they're so focused on just get out. I'll take nothing if it means I can leave.
Yes. And that's something that I really wanted to share, because have friendships with many women in bad relationships, leaving bad relationships, or not even abusive, but just like the other person makes it so miserable that they're just like, okay, whatever, I just want to leave. I just want out. Just give him everything. And my only advice to someone who's going through a divorce, and as someone who's been through divorce, it is so miserable, and you just want it to be done. It's something you never wanted in the first place. It's something that you never thought you'd have to do. And so when you're going through it, you just want it to be done. And in that situation, you cannot fully rely on your own feelings. You have to listen to people who have been through it and who are far removed from it and down the road. And I'm so glad that I did that and listened to people who are not emotionally involved, because it's there was no it helped me remove myself from the feelings of like feeling guilty about ending the marriage,
feeling guilty for leaving, feeling guilty for wanting anything, feeling guilty for everything,
Yeah.
And you really do.
Yeah.
I did too.
And so I guess that's all I really want to stress to someone who is leaving a bad marriage. Rely on the people who love you and people who have been in your situation and are saying to you, I wish I would have done this. Stand your ground on things you need to stand your ground on. Like, you have to be fair to yourself too. And if someone's telling you, I really wish I would have done this, listen to them.
And
at
also
least take it into consideration.
And one of the reasons why women will stay in an abusive marriage so long is because they have nothing of their own. Like, so many women, especially when they're stay-at-home mothers and they're in an abusive marriage, they don't want to leave because they have nowhere to go and they have no money. They have nothing. And there's that fear of, what am I going to do? Yeah. If which that wasn't my scenario necessarily, but if I could give a young woman in an abusive marriage any advice, it would be this: do whatever you have to do behind the scenes to prepare for that day. Prepare for it. Even if it's $20 here and there, and you give it to your mom and just say, hold on to this for me. Whatever you got to do, just prepare for it. Like, because it is so hard to leave when you have nothing and you don't know where you're going to go, and you'll stay longer than you should because of that. So even if, do whatever you can. Look at what your resources are. Are there shelters in your area? Yes, that would be humbling and it would suck. But just knowing that there's one there if you need it. Yeah. Talking to people who've been through it, knowing that, these are the things I wish I had set up for myself before I left. Just know what resources you have at hand, where you are, and do whatever you can to prepare for that moment. Because it will help you get out. Have a place to go. Have someone to support you. Have a therapist. My God, if you can get a therapist. A lot of therapists will take insurance. If you're afraid you can't afford it, a lot of them will take insurance. Have a little set of money somehow, some way. If there's any way that you can do it, have a little stash of money so that if worst case scenario, you need to stay in a hotel for a couple of weeks or whatever. If you have to travel to get to your family because maybe they don't live near you, whatever it takes, just get those things aligned if you can. If you can. Sometimes things happen and you have to flee and you have to get out immediately, and that isn't a possibility. But even knowing that there are shelters in your area or somewhere within driving distance that you can go will help you in that situation, so you're not sleeping in your car.
Yeah. That actually reminds me of a show I just watched, Big Little Lies. I know you've seen part of it, but she is in a very abusive relationship, and she's talking with her therapist, and her therapist is like, okay, well, we need to make a plan. She's like, a plan for what? And she said, a plan for for when you decide to leave. And something she's learned. I know this is completely unrealistic for just about everyone, but Nicole Kidman was very wealthy in this movie, in this show. And
Not always the case, though.
And the therapist told her, get an apartment, stock the fridge with food, put furniture in there, like do what basically get something completely move-in ready so that we can take having somewhere to go off the list of obstacles. And so now, while I know most people aren't going to be able to afford to get a secret apartment, the idea of having a plan, having somewhere you can go, having somewhere that there's food, having, have a bag packed, if you're truly in an abusive relationship, just having a plan, whatever that looks like, so that when the time comes,
just helps.
Like we talked about earlier, if you are in an abusive relationship, somewhere in you know.
Yeah, you do. You know that one day you're going to need to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You know what's interesting about Big Little Lies? I talk about sexual assault on my podcast all the time, and this is just changing the subject a little bit, and then we're going to come back to this. But I blocked out my sexual assault when I was younger, and it didn't hit me until I watched that show. And the scene with, I think it's Shailene Woodley, and I don't remember what her name is in the show.
When I watched that, I remember, because I hadn't seen that show until you told me what the story you're about to tell.
That scene with her was exactly what happened to me. And when I watched that, it triggered me. I had to get in therapy right after that because it triggered me, and all of everything that happened that I had blocked out and pushed away all those years and told myself didn't really even happen came back, and it just like hit me in the face. Like I remember I felt like I was going to throw up watching that scene because everything that happened was exactly what happened to me. Like it was insane. But anyway, my point is just that even in that show, that same character that sexually assaulted her, that was abusive to her, on the outside looking in, looked like a good-looking, put-together, successful, adoring husband and father. Mm-hmm. He had this persona, and I know we keep going back to this, but it's so scary because it's so real. It's so real. And if you haven't seen that show, trigger warning. It's about domestic violence, and it is about
honestly
sexual
if I
assault.
didn't know that going into it because of what you told me, that would have been really shocking. Yeah.
So just trigger warning, if you've never seen it, obviously be in a place in your life where you can watch that and not feel so upset by it. But I'm actually really glad they made that show because it did get me in therapy, like for the first time. Yeah. So anyway, going back to that, we talked about the divorce and everything. And now you spent 7 years. 7 years. I'm going to say it again. 7 years on your own single. I mean, you kind of dated a little bit casually here and there, but nothing serious. Like being single for 7 years after everything that happened in your past relationships. Did you ever question like if you'd ever find a good man, or like, will I ever be in a relationship again? Were there parts of you just felt like it just wasn't even possible?
Yeah, of course. And I think that something I want to clarify too, when I was talking about the divorces business stuff, for me, that more was about moving forward with the decision to get divorced, when I really strongly believed marriage is forever. And it wasn't a bad guy I was leaving. You know, I loved him. He loved me. We were great friends. I mean, we're friends now. We're much better as friends. But so for me, it was making the choice to leave a relationship that I wasn't happy in, but in choosing myself and my happiness.
Wow.
And so I just want to clarify, because I feel like that could have been taken the wrong way, or a way that I didn't intend.
No, I like that though. I like you saying that because that's so relatable. Yeah. Like, same for me. Yeah. There was so much guilt, and I felt so bad, like leaving a marriage when I genuinely felt like you get married and you stay married forever. Mm-hmm. You know, we both had like a religious upbringing in a to a certain degree, and that was very instilled in me my whole life, even though my parents got divorced.
Yeah.
You know, that
Yeah.
just when you get married and that's it.
Yeah.
And then feeling like I can't leave even
Mhm.
though I'm unhappy. I can't leave even though I know they're unhappy. I
Mhm.
can't leave because I made this commitment and I can't break that vow that I made to God. Like
Yeah.
there's so much with that.
Yeah.
There's so much healing that has to come from that too.
Yeah. Yeah. And so there have definitely been times where I felt that way and it was discouraging. And then I kind of got to a point where I was like, you know what? If I would just rather have an awesome single life than just be with someone that's not exactly right. And
Yeah.
so, you know, I went through this stage of like, you know, I really wanted to be with someone. And then it didn't happen. Like what's crazy is, you know, I know we've all had the thought of like, well, you and me, apparently we're everyone. But no, I know a lot of women, I've seen them say things like this, like, well, I never do anything. I'm never going to meet anyone. Like,
Yeah, that's me.
yeah.
I mean, and I'm okay with that right now. Like I'm in a good place where it's okay for me if I don't meet someone right now. And if it's a while, I'm okay with that. I'm in a pretty good place with myself. But there is a part of me that's like, even if I wanted to, it's not going to happen. I never leave my house.
And I thought that too. And there was one time I was on a business trip for work and I sat next to someone on an airplane and he was amazing. And we did the long distance things for a few months and he was a great guy. Long distance wasn't going to work out, but that kind of like renewed my like, okay, I don't have to be looking for this. I feel like when it's right, it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so that happened. And then I truly got to a point where, you know, you dated a few people here and there. I'm like, it's just, my single life is great. I'm gonna create this life that I love. I'm gonna have a great life with my kids.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do the things that I want. I'm gonna treat myself to the things I want. Like, and I genuinely got to a place where I was really, really good with my life, and to a point where it was like, I mean, if someone is going to come in to my life, it is going to have to be just perfect because my life is so good how it is without anyone. It's really going to have to be someone special to come in here and disrupt this.
I love that.
And I got to a point where I was like, you know what? I think maybe I just date when my kids are older. Like I don't really, you know,
you don't need it right
really
now.
Room in my
You're
life.
fulfilled right now.
Yeah, so maybe, this is just a stage of my life where I'm single, and then once my kids are out of the house, then maybe I think about it, and then and then I ended up meeting someone at a kid's birthday party. So it's just like
literally of all the places.
You know, this is more of I would say maybe more of like a spiritual belief, but I think when you're ready, it'll happen. You know, when you're in a good place, when the time is right, and I mean, in my experience, when you're looking, it's
you're not there yet.
You're not there yet. You're gonna find something, but it
might not
be what you want. Yeah,
I totally agree with that. I genuinely realized in my singleness and like in my healing before I got to this place where I am now, where I'm like, I'm content with my life. I'm good with my life. Finally at the stage where I'm open to someone coming into my life, but I don't need it anymore. I had never experienced that for the 37 years before this. I had never experienced what that felt like because I had always been looking and wanting and searching and hoping and expecting and waiting for someone. What I didn't realize in that was that was codependency.
You were looking for someone to fill what you needed to fill yourself.
Amen. I was looking to fill the void that I had. And I wanted someone else to do it for me. I needed someone else to do it for me.
Yeah.
I didn't feel good and confident and worthy and valuable unless someone was telling me that I was or making me feel like I was. And so for anyone listening, please understand that like there is a huge difference when you go from codependency to I'm open to it, but I don't need it anymore. And it is such a freeing, liberating feeling to finally do that work on yourself that fills that emptiness that you felt all those years before, so that when someone does come in your life, it's easier now because you're not expecting things of them that they're not there to do.
Mhm.
That isn't their role, that isn't their job. They get to be in companionship with you. They get to be your partner now, not your savior. You
And
know?
here's the thing, Ashley. If Mr. Right had walked right into your life at that time, it wouldn't have been enough.
It would have been like all the other
It
good
wouldn't have been
relationships that
enough
I didn't
because-
work, that didn't work.
Yeah, because no other person can make you a whole person.
Mm-mm.
You know what I mean?
No one
It's-
completes you. You complete yourself, and then someone can come along and be on that
and
ride with
enhance
you
it.
and
Mhm.
make it better.
Yeah,
And when you find that right person, that's exactly what happens.
exactly.
Your life just, it gets a little bit better, but you're good on your own too.
Mhm.
And then you finally get to a place where I would be devastated if this person left me. It would be really sad, but it wouldn't break me.
Yeah, and
I would still be okay.
Yeah.
Want them here, but I don't need them here.
Mhm.
And so learning to like break codependency. There's a book, I think it's called Codependency No More. It's really good. It's been around forever. Such a good book to read if you're like a relationship person that just finds yourself relationship after relationship after relationship. But being single and doing all that work by myself has been one of the most rewarding things I've ever done. And I know you did it because you were single for 7 years. And so many women that reach out to me are like, I just feel like I'll never meet someone. I feel like I've done the work, but I feel like I'll never meet someone. I don't want to be alone. And to me, that just means there's still more work to do
Mhm.
that you have to do on your own first.
And I honestly feel like this might not be a very popular viewpoint, but okay, what if you never meet someone?
Yeah.
That's okay.
I know. I'm so okay with
There's
that.
so many great things about life. I mean, I don't know. I would rather be single for the rest of my life than spend one more minute
Freaking man.
with the wrong person.
Amen. Amen. I can honestly say, especially this year when I did that work for myself and finally got to that place, when I looked back at my life, I realized that the absolute most rewarding relationships that I ever had were with my friends and my family.
Mm-hmm.
Those were the relationships that completed me, honestly.
Yeah.
Those were the relationships that gave me any hope at all that love exists. Those are the most beautiful relationships you'll ever have.
Yeah.
The people that are like, I love you for you, and I don't need anything from you. I'm just here, and
Yeah.
I'll always be here.
Yeah. I had a session with my therapist not too long ago. Our therapist.
Our therapist.
We see the same
Jeff.
therapist. Yeah, and I started seeing Jeff when I was pregnant with my daughter. So and she's 9. So it's been 10 years at this point that I've been
Wow.
seeing Jeff on and off. And I mean, he's really just changed my life.
Just being through everything you've been through, doing all the work, having those years of being single, and then just kind of stepping into the right relationship, or a good, healthy relationship rather, and being where you are now. Is there any advice that you would give to your younger self? If you could go back and look at her in the eyes and just be there with her and hold her hands, what would you tell her?
The first thing that comes to mind is that your body knows. When you feel that feeling in your body that something's off, it is.
Yeah.
And that's your intuition. And I no longer have to stick around to find out why that feeling's there. If I get that feeling about someone, that's enough for me to know that this isn't right. And so I think if I could go back to my younger self, I would reinforce that when something feels off, it is. Even if you don't have any reasons why, even if you can't pinpoint it, you need to listen to your gut and trust that.
Yeah.
And I would also probably tell her to get into therapy.
Do it now.
Because, it's a self-worth thing.
Yeah.
It's when you are being treated poorly and you're staying in a relationship where you're being treated poorly, it's because you don't think you deserve better for some reason or another. Because it really is innate to not allow people to treat you like shit once you don't feel like you deserve to be treated like shit, you know? And so, like, I think you're at that point now where, like, you don't have to really think about, oh, should I be accepting this? It's like someone is treating you badly. You just are done.
No.
You're just done with that person.
No, that's not going to be acceptable here.
Yeah. So I think that I would probably tell her that she deserves more. Yeah. And what you said earlier was great. I deserve at minimum what I'm giving. Yeah. And I don't think that I ever had that. It took me a long time to get that perspective. It wasn't until I would say maybe the last few years I started realizing, like, wait a second, if I'm willing to give this, surely there's got to be someone else out there who's willing to do the same.
Yeah, and there is. And when you meet a good, healthy person, it just is. It just exists. Yeah. It's reciprocal. There's no tug of war. There's no push and pull. Like, it just works.
Yeah, and I think we talked about this last time we talked, but love isn't crazy. Yeah. Love isn't controlling. I mean, it's easy. And I don't mean like life is always easy, but I mean, like, if you are with someone and it's good and it's healthy and it's like
love is
the relationship can be easy and it can be fun and it doesn't have to be this whole push and pull.
Yeah. I think it all boils down to, when you're with this person, do you feel safe? Yeah. And if you do, then you're probably in a good relationship. Yeah. You're probably with a healthy person, and that's what matters. Yeah. And if there's any part of you that doesn't feel safe, even if you can't pinpoint it, even if you have nothing in front of you to say this is why, you're not. You're probably not.
And that's a really good point. It's really common for people to feel like they need proof. I need proof before I can leave. I need to know that this is right. And you don't.
You don't.
You don't have to say anything that doesn't feel right.
You don't have to find out the hard way. You really don't.
There doesn't even have to be anything majorly terrible going on. If it's not right anymore and you're not happy, you don't have to stay in it, period.
Amen. And there will always be someone else.
Reason enough.
Someone else will always come along. It's like sometimes we think that if I leave this relationship, I'm going to be alone forever. It's not true. It's just not true. Yeah. Not only can you leave this relationship, but you can find someone that's a better fit for you.
And you will. To.
And you deserve to.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you for sharing your experiences and the things that you've learned through the years. And if anyone wants to find you, where can they find you?
Well, Bombshells by Samantha, Instagram, Facebook, all the socials. I would say that's the easiest place to find me.
Now, is your course still available?
It's not online right now. Okay. However, if someone was interested in coaching or one of my courses, send me a message. Okay. And I have so many things that I would be happy to work out. My website's just not up anymore right now.
Okay, perfect. Good to know. Well, that's it for today. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of This Is Where We Heal. I hope this was beneficial for you, and I hope that you, at minimum, learned to know what you deserve and don't accept less. Bye.